7 days and I don't know how many takes later, I'm finally getting this video out. Guys, I will never understand why pension funds or just retirement funds in essence are just so complicated. They are so necessary, but just understanding the legislation behind them is ridiculous. But I've tried to make this video as succinct as possible and as easy to understand as possible. So let's get into it. You beautiful humans, and welcome back to the channel and another episode of Mo's Money Mondays. Now today is part 2 of retirement funds, and this was supposed to be out last week, but life happened. So today we are going to be tackling occupational funds, and as I mentioned, the two funds that fall into this category are the pension fund and the provident fund. Now, as I explained last week, you need to have a conventional employer-employee relationship in place, and your employer needs to have to be a member of a pension fund. So they can either do this by outsourcing the pension fund's benefits, as in having an outside administrator, being part of a big umbrella fund where other companies are part of that umbrella fund. Or they can do it in-house. A lot of employers will prefer to do it outside because the more companies there are, the more members, it kind of reduces the fees on you. But if they do have it in-house, then they can afford it. But it does tend to be a bit more expensive to do it in-house. Right, so when you do now get your employer and your employer is part of an occupational fund, it is compulsory for you to be, if your employer is a member of a pension or provident fund, it is compulsory for you to be a member, depending on the type of contract you signed. So usually people who will qualify to be members of this are full-time permanent contracted employers who fall between the ages of 18 and 60, so it can be 65 with other employers, and others can take it higher, but usually that is the normal retirement age for employers. So just bear in mind that you cannot choose whether you are a member of a provident or a pension fund if your employer is part of a pension fund. You can also on a yearly basis choose what percentage of your salary, what percentage of your pensionable salary you are going to contribute towards your occupational fund. So in the fund rules, as I mentioned that there will be fund rules. In the fund rules, there will be a minimum percentage that you can contribute, and usually that'll be like around 5%, or 7.5%. Yes, 7.5%. That will be the usual. Your employer sometimes can allow you under extenuating circumstances to take it down to like 5%, but that is under extenuating circumstances and on an individual basis. And on the upper threshold, as I said, you can only contribute 27.5%, which is the limit of your tax deductibility for the provident or pension fund contributions. Now, I'm going to start with the similarities on these funds, and the similarities being that these funds will have fund rules in place. If you don't know your fund rules, or you would like to get an idea of what your fund rules are, you can go and talk to your HR. They should be able to take you through it or lead you to the person who can explain the fund rules to you. But basically in the fund rules, it'll be who the trustees are what the valuations are going to be, among other things, and it will explain how unclaimed benefits will be handled, how group benefits will be handled, how contributions, and the investment strategy of your occupational fund. So those things will be handled in your fund rules, and if you want an explanation, as I mentioned, you can go to your HR. Now, I just need to point out again that I am not giving any financial advice here. If you need financial advice on your occupational fund, please go see a registered FSP. They should be registered with the FSCA, and you can find a list of registered people on the FSCA website. As I mentioned in one of my other videos on the FSCA and regulators. Right, okay. So your pension fund or your provident fund is taxed as a fringe benefit. Now, if you're an employee, you should know that fringe benefits are things like your pension fund, if you get house subsidy, if you get a home loan from your employer, if you get car, petrol, and all of those things will be taxed as a fringe benefit. But the good thing with occupational funds or retirement funds is that they are tax deductible. What this means is that at the end of the year, when you pay your tax to SARS and you fill out those things, you can claim back the money. Now, for occupational funds, and if this is your only fund that you are contributing to, usually your employee, and if this is like your only stream of income, your employer will have calculated this into your PAYE, so that when they pay tax for you, they will have taken all this into consideration. And you will find that usually when you do a tax return at the end of the year, the amount that you get is like a zero or like a minus 0.07 cents there. If you do, however, contribute to any other retirement fund, retirement annuity in this case, or if you have another stream of income and whatnot, you can claim those contributions the extra contributions that you make, and those are going to be limited to a percentage of 27.5 of your income or remuneration, capped at 350,000 per annum. So if you are earning like lots of moolah and you contribute about 370,000 in a year towards retirement funds, you can only get a cap of 350,000 from SARS. But whichever is lesser between the 27.5 of your income or the 350,000, SARS will give you that. Now, I wanted to focus a lot on what to do with your retirement fund when you leave your employer. You're going to leave your employer either by going to another employer or just quitting your job because being an employee is not your cup of tea, or you retire or you die. I'm going to start with ones that are similar across the provident and the pension fund. So when you leave your employer, say you resign and you are going into another employer, you can transfer your current occupational fund to your employer. You can transfer your benefits to your employer's provident fund. So the advantage of this is that it's tax-free, that transfer. So just bear in mind, you can only transfer pension fund to pension fund, and then provident fund you can transfer it into a pension fund. But this comes with a bit of restrictions, which I'll explain when it comes to retirement. But in this case, it has no tax bearing at all. So it's a 0% tax transfer, and you will still be contributing to that. At that point where you need to transfer your occupational fund, you get a once-off withdrawal, pre-transfer withdrawal, which I can't say I don't recommend. But you will see when I explain the tax tables what this does to your tax, and this is going to affect your retirement tax and your withdrawal tax if you ever need to take money from your provident fund in your years of being employed, right? Okay, so we've talked about you can transfer it to your new employer's fund. The next one is that you can preserve. So you can transfer your benefit to a preservation fund. So there is a provident preservation fund and a pension preservation fund, which they are self-explanatory in that you can preserve your provident fund in a provident preserver and your pension fund in a pension preserver. However, you can also transfer your provident fund to a pension preserver, and that comes with limits, which I will explain again later. Okay, and then let's tackle the most morbid of all: when you die. Now, according to the fund rules, as I mentioned in the beginning of the video, your fund will have a board of trustees, meaning that handles the running of the day-to-day running of the occupational fund. Now, the board of trustees will handle what happens to your provident or pension fund when you die. So when you start working, they will give you a whole lot of forms to sign. HR will give you a whole lot of forms to sign. Among those will be your group benefits, so your group life benefit, your group risk, disability and sickness, and there will be your provident fund signatures and all of that. You will also have a form to nominate beneficiaries on those. Right, those beneficiary nomination forms are just a guideline on where you want your pension fund or provident fund benefits to go when you die. So the board of trustees will take that into account, but it will by no means be binding to them to give your occupational fund benefits to the people you have nominated. What the board of trustees will do is take that into account, but then they will also look at who was financially reliant on you to support them. So who will be affected the most by your death. So say you have a spouse and you have children. Your spouse will definitely get a piece of the monies. Even if you did nominate that your spouse gets everything, your spouse will get a part of your benefits, but the other benefits will go to your children because they still need to be educated, and your death is going to affect that. So their benefits will be paid out. The trustees might decide that your wife will be responsible for those benefits. They'll put them in the children's name, but make in a guardian fund. So make your wife the guardian or your husband the guardian, or they will go into a beneficiary fund where the state will handle how that money is paid out to them on a month-to-month basis, on a yearly basis. The guardian can choose this, but the monies will be handled by the state in how they are invested and how they are distributed, right? So yes, nominate the beneficiaries to your occupational funds, but just beware that the trustees have the final say in who gets those funds. So for example, if you die intestate, meaning that you do not have a will in place or you do not have any beneficiaries in place, the trustees will look at who you have as a next of kin. If you are married and you had children outside of wedlock, those children will be looked at, and depending on whether they are financially dependent or independent, then the board of trustees will distribute those monies accordingly. If you are not married and you just leave parents or you leave siblings, whatever the fact may be, or if you are caring for your parents will also get a part of that because they are going to be affected by your death. Okay, right? That was a mouthful. All right, and then now we move to retirement. I mentioned withdrawal benefits. So withdrawal benefits, as I mentioned, before you transfer your occupational fund either to a preserver or to employer's to employer's occupational fund, you are entitled to a pre-transfer withdrawal. So what that means is that you're allowed to take money. You can take all of it, or you can take portions of it. What this means is that you will be taxed according to the withdrawal, the lump sum withdrawal. You will be taxed according to the lump sum withdrawal tax table, right? Meaning that, as the table now you can see from the table, meaning that monies from 0 to 25,000 will be tax free, and every other money going down will be taxed according to these brackets that depending on the percentage of money that you take, the monies will be taxed according to so. All right. What this affects now is also your retirement lump sum table. So at retirement, you are entitled to take 500,000 of your pension fund, up to 500,000 of your retirement fund, tax free. But if you have ever taken money from your provident fund, say whenever you move employer, you take cash, you dwindle that 500,000. So if, say, by your employee life, you have taken up to 300,000 from your pension funds, from your occupational funds or your retirement funds, when you moved employers, and you've taken like 300,000, at the point where you retire, you will only have 200,000 left to take tax free, and everything else will be taxed according to this retirement table. Okay, so now we move to retirement, right? So you are retiring from your employer, and you have a provident fund. Woo, it's quite windy out there. You retire from your provident fund. Okay, as things stand right now, when you retire, you can take your provident fund fully and in cash. You can choose that they give you all your money in cash and send it to your bank account, right? And this has its disadvantages, because you can eat that money and finish it. So like, you retire at 65, they send you that money in 5 years, you've blown through that money. But at this point, it's law. You can take it however you want. They are trying to change this legislation to look like that of the pension fund and the retirement annuity, and I'll explain just now. But you are going to be taxed according to that table that I just showed you now, where the first 500,000 will be tax free, and everything after that will be taxed according to the brackets, right? Okay, so we move on to the pension fund. Now this is one that people get very iffy about and very complicated about, because they think someone is keeping their money and is not giving them their full benefits. So with a pension fund, you are only allowed, when you retire, you're only allowed to take a third. So like, take that whole slice, that whole pie, that is your pension fund, and divide it into 3 equal parts. You can only take one part in cash. If it's over 500,000, then you will be taxed according to the retirement lump sum table. But only if your money is over 247,500. Woo. 247,500. So if your money does not reach that threshold, then you are allowed to take that money in cash, né? But let's work off the basis that your money is over that 247,500, and you have 500,000 in your pension fund. You can take 1/3 in cash, and then the other 2/3 must be used to buy you a living annuity. Now, what a living annuity or a guaranteed annuity is that it's a vehicle that you will use in your retirement to give you a monthly income. So when Bonkonu said, and whatnot, pension, that's what a living annuity does. You can go to an advisor and they let you know what the options are, but the two main things that only two things that your money can go into is a living annuity or a guaranteed annuity, and you can choose how you receive that income. Now, I hope this was clear, because it's a whole lot of mouthfuls and the tax can get a bit complicated, which is why I only just focused on when you retire, because when you retire or you leave your fund, because that's mostly what will affect a lot of people going forward. Oh, I'm forgetting that you can choose to leave your pension fund with your employer. You can move to another employer and leave that one that you had previously, wherever it is. It's called an unclaimed benefit, or it's you defer the retirement. So you can choose at a later stage what to do with that. What you will do is you will not be able to contribute to that pension fund or provident fund, but you will still be paying the fees according to what the fund rules of that fund were. So if it was expensive and your previous employer's one is a bit less expensive, or it would have been cheaper to move to a preservation fund, you will still be paying the fees according to what those fund rules are, and you can choose at a later stage what to do with it. Like if you feel like it was really invested well, some people do tend to leave their provident and benefits where they were. I think I've covered everything for this week. Just please, guys, let me know if you have any questions, and I will try to answer your questions before I start my video for next week. But also, please talk to your HR and get them to help you understand what your provident fund looks like, what your benefit looked like, what your group benefits look like, because they are tied into this. They are separate benefits because they cover your life and all of that, but they tend to be linked with your occupational fund. So if you don't know anything about that, just ask your HR to do that. And if you need an explanation on what fringe benefits are taxed like, and the taxes you pay on your PAYE, please let me know, and I can ask one of my friends who are tax consultants to come and help us break that down. But in the meantime, please look out for video number 3 next week, where I will be discussing preservation funds and what goes on in those preservation funds, and what happens when you leave the preservation funds and all of that. A lot of it is going to be similar to this week, but there are just a couple of things that are noteworthy that I'm going to be talking about there. In the meantime, stay blessed, you guys, and stay healthy and safe out there. I know it's level 1, but please keep safe. For now, adios muchachos. Love, peace, and light.